My name's Faye Sayers. I've been a community midwife for about the last 9 years at the Trust. Started here as soon as I qualified. In 2018, we got pregnant, my husband and I, Mark, got pregnant with our first son in the March time, and he was due in November, at the end of November. Unfortunately, at 31 weeks, I woke up in the night in a little bit of pain. Made my way up to the hospital. Unfortunately, when we got there, our little boy had already died. We called him Douglas. He was a beautiful little baby. And we spent a lot of time at the Women's being able to see him afterwards. We were very fortunate that there was a place that we could see him each day. We tried for a couple of years to get pregnant with our second little boy, Leonard, who was born prematurely at the Women's at 32 weeks back in the start of May. But he went to the wonderful neonatal unit at the hospital, had amazing care. We're so proud of how far he's come. And he was discharged home a couple of weeks ago, and he's now at home with us. So yeah, he was... he's very precious. In the couple of weeks after Douglas was born, his funeral was 3 weeks after he was born. So our parents were both able to come and see him as well, which was really great up at the Women's. But my husband, he had only managed to get his 2 weeks paternity leave, and then his manager really kindly gave him another couple of weeks to be off with me. I took 6 months leave. I was planning to take 10 months had Douglas have been alive and come home with us. But because of pay and being at home, I didn't want to be at home with hardly any pay without a baby. So I shortened that to 6 months. But really, the milestones in the first year, his birthday, Christmas, things like that were very difficult to cope with whilst I was at work. Obviously, being a midwife, that was a really difficult transition for me, but I knew I needed to try and keep midwifery. It was one of the only things I had left, so I had to. It was my vocation. It's what I've always wanted to do. And so many people said to me, you know, how can you go back to work and look after babies and look after women? And for me, it wasn't really the baby aspect of it. It was the women and the pregnant women, because that's where I left my journey. My journey ended in pregnancy, so that was what affected me more, and it was difficult, but as I say, it was my vocation and I had to get it back, I had to draw it back. It was something I was really passionate about. The trauma of the initial few days afterwards, trying to process that is really difficult without, you know, family and support around you. We needed that time to sit and work out where we were going to go and access all of the support that we needed to access at the time. The whole team that I worked within were incredible. They gave me the space and the time that I needed to adjust back into and find the new midwife that I was going to be. I was never going to be the same midwife that I was when I left, you know. So they gave me the space to find that. My manager worked with me and we worked out, you know, some annual leave and some shorter days potentially for me to return slowly and get back into work the best way I could, really. And again, as I say, find the new midwife that I needed to be from there on. We started to try for another baby quite soon after I returned to work, and we were trying for a good couple of years before we got pregnant with Leonard, and we got pregnant on Douglas's birthday, which was fantastic. Because I've been trying for quite a long time, I decided that I wanted to progress in midwifery. I'd always looked forward to becoming a team sister out in community, a band 7 role, and I thought, you know what, let's just apply. We might never get pregnant again, we just don't know, so let's give it a go. And I was lucky enough to secure the job over at Wheely Castle as the team sister there, which is a fantastic role and I really enjoy it. And that's kind of the new midwife that I've become, really, is taking a more senior role. You know, trying to implement changes through the trust that I know are going to benefit women massively. I have insight into so many aspects of midwifery now that I never had before, that help me to be more sympathetic with women, be able to share my story with women, which really helps some women that I come across and families that are, you know, going through the same situation that perhaps I have done with Douglas. And being able to talk to women about my journey, because a lot of women, being a midwife, a lot of women will ask me, have you got children yourself? And I'm not afraid to say, you know, we did have a little boy, his name was Douglas, and he was stillborn at 31 weeks. And, you know, sharing that story with women really helps them to see me as a human being. Sometimes I find people a little taken back by how open I am with it. I think maybe that's part of being a midwife that makes me feel so open and able to talk about it. And I'm in the environment where people understand, and midwives have dealt with women and families who have been through the same experience. So I find it easy to talk to those, you know, and share my story with those. It is a bit of a taboo. I think the more people are able to share these stories, the more insight people can get from me and from people with the same story as me, and helps them to understand where we've been and where we are now, and you can overcome something like this. You know, it's not easy, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of mental capacity to be able to overcome something like that. But I think when women see me and see that I'm a midwife and I'm still a midwife after going through that, it helps them to open up and be, you know, be able to talk to me about their story as well. So when I found out I was pregnant with Leonard, obviously we didn't know it was a boy at the time, but I was very, very frightened. I knew I was in the best place. For me, the women's is the best care that you can receive. And having received care for my pregnancy with Douglas, I knew I was going to be in safe hands with my pregnancy this time round. I can't even describe the care that I've had. It's just been incredible. They've pulled me through situations that I never thought I could get through. They, you know, were always at the end of the phone when I needed them. It was a really frightening time, especially around the 31-week point with Leonard this time round. And then, of course, I delivered at 32 weeks. And I think part of being so cautious is what took me to the hospital that day. So when I arrived at the hospital, I'd had a little bit of reduced movement. And I had a little bit of niggly pain, and my husband, bless him, was at home with me at the time. You know, I said, oh, it feels a little bit the same as perhaps it did when we lost Douglas, and he was straight away, get in the car, come on, let's go. We got there, we were taken straight through. The midwives put me on the monitor, and unfortunately his heart rate dropped and it wouldn't recover, so we were rushed very quickly down to theatre. I had a general anaesthetic. And Leonard was born at 32 weeks and 4 days. And yeah, he received amazing care. He was put on a bit of oxygen and, you know, managed to breathe by himself. So, and then we spent 5 weeks on the neonatal unit with the amazing staff there, helping us to get used to having a premature baby, really. You know, I wasn't particularly confident with Leonard to start off with because he was tiny. So, you know, they really helped my husband when my husband went down there by himself that day, because I didn't see Leonard until the evening because of the general anaesthetic, that they showed him how to change nappy, how to pick him up. And by the time I got down there, my husband was actually more confident than I was. So, yeah, they were an amazing support. And we were really lucky that day that we were at the hospital when we had the emergency, and we managed to keep Leonard with us and be able to bring him home. Because he was 8 weeks early, my maternity leave would have started much earlier, a couple of months earlier than I had planned. So therefore I'd have gone back to work probably a couple of months earlier than I'd planned back for next year. So this new policy is going to allow people to, mums and dads, to be able to take the time that they need and the space that they need after the baby's born, to be able to go to the neonatal unit and see them every day, and making sure that that doesn't cut time short later on, because obviously there's going to be milestones that potentially I would miss if I wasn't off. So I think it's really important that they're given the space and the time to adjust when they first come home, especially after losing Douglas. We needed time to be with our live baby and to appreciate and really take it in what had happened, especially having had him prematurely. It's such a whirlwind. You find yourself just getting up, going to the unit, coming home, and you don't particularly process what's going on, really. So then to come home, it all comes crashing down a little bit, and you sort of realise exactly what you've been through, and you know, that you've got this precious baby at home and how lucky you are. So I think the policy will be incredible for women, families, even sort of other children, to be able to be a family and process everything that's going on. The memory box that we received from the women's, you get a candle in there, a little packet so that we can put some of Douglas's hair in, which we did, a couple of teddy bears, one that stays with Douglas and then one that we could take with us, and then being able to add lots of things to it as along the journey, really, because there's lots of things that you pick up that people perhaps wouldn't realise. You know, we've got his first clothes, and one of the most precious things that we found when we were at the women's is a service called Remember My Baby, which is an amazing professional photography company who come in courteously, you know, you don't pay for the service, and they took photographs of me and my husband with him, and skin to skin. There was pictures of my mum and dad and my brother and his wife, so you know, that was really invaluable to us, that service. And I'm not sure people know about that service. Even as a midwife, I didn't know about that service, so that was incredible, and we've got so many beautiful photographs that we were able to share with people. Another thing that we had was casts of his hands and feet made, which we did pay for. It wasn't a free service, but that's one of the things that perhaps I would like to try and get put in place for bereaved families when Woodland House opens, the new building for bereaved parents at the Women's. It's the most precious thing that I took away from that delivery, and from having Douglas. Being able to hold his hand is the most incredible thing I could have after he died. So yeah, that was the most amazing thing that we could do. So in the box I've got, as I say, there's absolutely loads of stuff. These boxes are incredible. They're donated by a charity, and inside the box it has the name of the baby whose parents had paid for this box to be donated. So parents of bereaved children will give a donation, and then their baby's name will be put onto the inside of the box. So we've got Zachary's donation, which is really special, and it's nice to give you that connection with other people who have been through the same thing. In the memory box is a beautiful book, and it's a little bit about where you go after you've lost a baby and how you find yourself again, how you put yourself back together, really. And me and my husband found this book so valuable that it was actually read out at his funeral, at Douglas's funeral. We read this book out to everybody at the funeral. These boxes are amazing to be able to keep everything fresh, and you know, take it out a year later on his birthday, you know, special occasions. We take these boxes out and we look at them and remember him, you know. And as I say, it's just completely invaluable to us to be able to have those memories. So Woodland House will be incredible for bereaved families. I think one of the hardest things for my husband when Douglas died was having to walk through the corridors of the Women's Hospital, hearing babies cry. I think having Woodland House will give people the opportunity to be together more, be able to have their family come, and not have to walk through the hospital and you know, see all these live babies. Or I think the baby's cry is probably one of the hardest things to have to hear. When you lose a baby, there's little things that you would never think about until you'd lost a baby. One of them was that I wanted to be able to take Douglas outside, for me to be able to do that for the first time. And there's a small garden on the delivery suite opposite the bereavement section, the Abbey suite, where we were fortunate to be able to take him outside. We got to talk to him about what was outside, and you know, planes flew over. Just little simple things like that were really precious to me at that time. So I think that would probably be one of the most precious things, is being able to have that space to walk around, to leave the room with him, you know, and not be just confined to that one small space.